Hi, welcome to Heather's Kitchen Sink. My name is Heather Bischoff, and I created this space as a place for people to process their emotions, their thoughts, because I was going through cancer last year and there were so many things that I was trying to process. And what came to me was just putting stuff in the kitchen sink, because in the kitchen sink it just needs to be cleaned and resolved. But the great thing about the kitchen sink is that it does get cleaned and emptied. And that is what I'm hoping this place can essentially be, a place for you to come and land and experience something, maybe find some healing or some tools to help you in your daily life. Today, someone asked me to talk about my trip to Provence, France. And this trip was back in 2016, and I got to stay at Julia Child's home in Provence. One of my friends owns the property and runs a cooking school out of it. If you're interested to learn more about the cooking school, I would love to share that with you because it's absolutely magnificent. But I went to Provence on a women's business retreat, and it was super fun to go to and just to speak to other like-minded women. Here I am in Julia Child's home in France. It was my first time in France, and meeting women that I had never met before from all over the country. It was quite a treat, and I can remember my marriage was not in a great place at that time, and I remember my ex-husband really didn't love that I was traveling because I was traveling by myself, and I got a lot of flack for doing it. And I remember him sending me a picture of him at a place where I knew the bar that he was at, and there was a girl sitting on his lap. And I just remember thinking, honestly, I just remember thinking, what the fuck? Because here I am, literally across the world in a foreign country, and he's sending this picture, and I just kind of remember feeling really hurt, and I knew I couldn't talk about it. I didn't really have a way to call him at the point. We really didn't have great Wi-Fi service, but obviously we had enough Wi-Fi service that I could see this picture. And I just want to say, it was really hard because I think in my gut, I knew that something was wrong. I knew something was wrong. I don't know if I really fully understood what it was, because in my mind, I wanted to believe that he was a man of integrity, because integrity is really important to me, really important to me. And I just wanted to think that after 20 some years of marriage that, and just being together, we built a life together, that, that's just so disrespectful and rude of him to do. So I'm human. I'm definitely human when I think about these things. And I think part of it for me, because I hear this all the time, and I know some women literally go crazy with that stuff, and I'm not saying that that's wrong or right or anything. I feel like I grew up with so much drama, and my ex-husband is so much drama, that for me, I would rather just confront it and have an adult conversation about it and process it. From that point, that was kind of like the universe giving me a sign that, hey, you really need to pay attention, because after that, there were definitely other breadcrumbs that were being dropped for me about his whereabouts and who he was with. So if I were to write a letter to him, and honestly, when I think about that, I know that we hear about, oh, I'm going to write him a letter because a letter is safe. A letter is a way for me to process my emotions without having any feedback or pushback. And what I've learned, because I've wanted to write him so many letters, and what I've learned is those letters are for me, really. Those letters are for me to process my feelings. So if you need to do that, I would highly recommend and encourage you to do that. There's ceremonies that you can have where you can get it out of your body and you can write the letter and you can burn it or bury it or save it for 6 months and read it and see if you still feel the same way. There's so many things that you can do with it. And I remember probably, I want to say in 2022, I got a phone call from my ex-husband's current fiance at the time, and I don't even know why I answered the phone, but this person acted like they knew me. I have no idea who this person is or how they got my name, but essentially I don't talk to my ex-husband, and it's not because I don't want to, it's just because it's not healthy for me, it's not good for me to do that, and I had to reach out to him about something that, I had to take care of, and so there was like a little conversation that happened, not very much, and I quickly was reminded why I don't talk to him, but so she called me, so I'm assuming that's how she got my phone number, from his phone, which to me, again, is like, why are you in a relationship with somebody if you have to be looking at their phone? So it's a whole nother thing, because if you don't have trust in a relationship, then why are you there? Anyway, she called me and she, essentially said, is it just me, or is he a narcissistic POS? And I remember really thinking in that moment, wow, like, this is a moment for me to have so much revenge if I wanted to just blow up his life and to just tell this person that I don't know, the good, the bad, the ugly. And I thought about it for a moment, and I just thought, this is the man who is the father of my children. And regardless of what happened in our marriage, we had a lot of good years. And that's that. And so my response to that question was, instead of asking me what he is, I would ask you why you're attracted to that. And that was essentially the gist of the very short conversation, because, she was like, well, he said this and he said that. And then, apparently, he talks about me a lot to these other women, which I feel bad for them. But it's just fascinating to me because, I just asked her, like, instead of making it about him. And so that's really my point here is that when you're in a relationship, it's not so much about the other person. It's really about you. What's good for you, what makes you feel good, what makes you feel safe, and what makes you feel aligned in your spirit and soul. And that's just really what I wanted her to get. And I don't know if she got it. And honestly, that's not any of my business. She never, thankfully, called me back. I'm really glad about that. But I think, when I think about, being in this really beautiful place and getting this really awful, ugly picture, and then fast forward, that's kind of like all the things that happened. If you've been here, I just want to, one, say pay attention, listen to your gut. I'd also love to hear your stories about that. And, I don't know how you process this or experience it, and I would love to learn more about how you process and experience it. But when you're in relationship, and it really doesn't even have to be a romantic relationship. It can also be a friendship, because I've also had that experience where a dear, dear friend of mine was really just like screaming and yelling at me. And it happened a couple times. And, the first time it happened, I kind of just took it because that's what I was used to. I was used to allowing people to scream and yell at me because, one, that's what I grew up with, and two, that's what I thought I deserved. And, this friend of mine who we spent so much time together, even though we didn't live anywhere near each other, like not even in the same state, we talked to each other. We had virtual dinners. We talked every day. Like, I knew what was going on in her life. She knew what was going on in my life. And I mean, on some points, or perspectives, whatever the word might be, she felt comfortable enough with me that she could be that. But the second time that it happened, I essentially just said, listen, I don't want to do this. Like, so if we can't have the conversation in a civil in a civil way, like either the tone needs to change now, or we can have this conversation another time. And that's essentially how I address it. And so if you're ever in that situation where, again, people screaming and yelling at you is not okay. It's never okay. If you're experiencing that, I would love, again, for you to reach out to me. I want you to get the support that you need, but it's also important to know that that's not normal and it's not okay. And, my children witnessed this their whole entire life. And, post-divorce, I just don't tolerate that. I don't tolerate that from anyone. And my children know that because it doesn't feel good, it's not necessary, and it's unkind. So I ended that friendship because it didn't stop, and I could understand where this person was coming from, and I was not trying to hurt her. I was not trying to be difficult. I just wanted to be treated with love and kindness. And I think that should be the bare minimum. And so if someone can't meet you at that bare minimum of treating you with love and kindness, then I would ask the question of, why are you allowing them in your life? Why are you allowing them to take up any of your energy, quite honestly? And essentially, I ended that friendship. I ended my marriage because he would have gladly maintained his escapades while, still being married to me. And that's not my thing. I don't like that. I'm a one-on-one kind of girl. So I essentially, gave him the opportunity because boundaries are important. And I think I've talked about this before. Setting boundaries is an act of love. It's an act of leadership. And setting a boundary is empowering. It's kind, it's loving. And, with my ex-husband, we got to this point because, I knew that he was engaged to someone else while we were married. And I will go into that story another time. I don't want to paint the picture that he's a bad guy, because I don't think he's a bad guy. Hurt people, as they say. And that's the truth. So I was willing to really sit with this of, okay, now I know that he got engaged on our anniversary, and I got the bill for the ring. And so when we finally had a chance to come together and have a conversation, I just remember having a very civil conversation, sitting in the living room and just saying, hey, if you want to make this work, I will make it work. Because there was a point in the whole process where I really asked myself, is this about my ego or, my pride, or what is this really about? And there was a point where I was willing to be unhappy because we had built a life together, whatever life, that was. And so I wasn't willing to just throw it away because I got hurt and in my ego. And so I was like, we've got, children, we have a life, we've all these things to look forward to still. And if you're willing to put the work in, I'm willing to put the work into. And his response to me, I also said that, if you're going to do that, you need to move in and you need to get the ring back and you can't talk to her anymore. And his response to me was, that would be disrespectful. I'm just going to let you sit with that for a minute. And I just remember sitting there thinking, I literally have spent the best, I don't even know. I feel like the best years of my life are just happening now. But, all of these 20 some years of my life, literally half of my life I've spent with you. And you've just met this person, not that long ago. And you think that's disrespectful. And so that was the moment where I knew my marriage was over. And I essentially just, ended that conversation by saying, okay, we're done. And, filed everything and it was done. Because, I feel like there's only so much a person can allow. I don't expect people to be perfect, because no one's perfect. I make mistakes. I mess up. I was not perfect in the marriage. I don't want anyone to think that, the issues in our marriage had nothing to do with me, because they absolutely did. We had a lot of things. And so I'm not saying that, anything that he did wrong, or I'm not saying anything like that. I'm just saying it takes two in a marriage. And when things are happening, it means that needs are not being met. And so I didn't fully comprehend or understand that at the time the way that I do now. And, would I have done things differently? Yes, I would have done things differently. Do I think that we would be, in a different place now? No, I don't. I'm really happy where I am now, and I'm happy where my life is going. But all this to say is, if you have had this situation, if you're going through a separation or a divorce or a breakup, I just want to encourage you to look at yourself rather than looking at the other person, because it would have been easy, really easy for me to look at him and where he was and what he was doing or not doing. And instead, I took the breadcrumbs that were, he essentially was leaving, whether it was intentional or unintentional. And I really just started to look at myself and ask myself, like, is this what I want? What is my part in this? And, and I'll be honest, in the beginning of the separation, it was really hard for me because I took the responsibility of all of it. I mean, I felt like a complete failure growing up in such a religious, home, and, we were that family that planted churches and were, involved in the churches and the praise team and the youth group and all the things. Like, we did all the things. I did all the things. And so to have a failed marriage feels like such a failure. And I took that on. Like, I took all the responsibility of that. I felt so much shame that I couldn't turn it around and save it. And so again, like, it was both of us. It takes two people. And the only part that I or you can really control is your responses, your reactions, how you carry yourself. And if there are children involved, thankfully my children were, young adults. They were like 18 and 23 at the time. So young adults, but I still wanted to be there for them. I still wanted to support them. And I still knew how I handled the situation was going to inform them of a lot of things. And if I was going to be talking bad about their dad, like, that just made me look small, really. And it made me look insecure. And I just didn't want to do that because they both have their own relationship and, with their dad. And I just didn't want to get in the way of that. And so I just want to encourage you to write the letter, to sit with yourself and process it, to really, like I said, to that woman, why are you attracted to this? And I absolutely believe in marriage. I think marriage is so important. I do not recommend or suggesting throwing away a marriage just because your ego got bruised or something didn't happen that you didn't like. If you're in an abusive situation, that's completely different, and I'm not talking about that. But I really do believe in doing the work and keeping a marriage and keeping a family intact, if it is at all possible. And if it is, that's amazing. And if it isn't, there is a path forward. But rather than blaming the other person, getting that picture, I could have done so many things. And if I would have got that picture now, I would definitely handle it different, because now I have a voice. Now I would have said, like, not even in an accusatory way, but just more of like, what was the intent of that picture? And that hurt me. Like, that really hurt me, because now I can say that without it being accusatory, essentially, or a lot of emotion behind it. I can just very matter of fact. And I think some of it comes with age and experience, but also just growth. And now I don't know that I would tolerate that. And I don't mean that in any specific way. It's just, I value myself. I did not value myself in my marriage because I didn't know how to. I had no idea how to. But if someone is going to send a picture like that I'm in a relationship with, I would assume that they know that that is a hurtful thing to do. And I don't want to be with somebody who is going to intentionally hurt me, whether it is a business relationship, a friendship, or a romantic relationship. I just value myself so much more now that for me, I do believe in giving people chances, but honestly, if you're going to do something that hurtful, to literally like slap somebody's face with that, I'm really going to question, why am I here? Why am I here in this? Like, what am I actually getting out of this? Why am I staying? And what happens, what am I afraid of? And what happens if those fears happen? Like, if what happens if I move across the country and I fail? I fail. I go back to Indiana and I figure out another plan. What happens if I don't get the client that I'm really hoping to get? I'll get another one. What happens if, the relationship I'm in fails? I'll be okay. And I just want to encourage you, if you're in this place, if you've been in this place, please share your experience. If you think that this resonated with you or is helpful to someone that that is going through something, please share this video. I would love for you to like it. If you haven't subscribed, I would love for you to be part of this community. And I'm excited to continue to share with you. I hope that this has been helpful and gives you some hope, because I feel if you're willing to do the work, then you'll get to the other side. You are either, going into the storm, in the middle of the storm, or coming out of the storm, but we're all always in one of those three places. And so it's not continuous, it's not all the time, but everybody is going through something. Everybody has something going on. And I just want to remind you that you're not alone, you're not crazy, and there are absolutely ways for you to get to the other side. There is a light at the end of the tunnel. Thanks for being with me today. Again, I really appreciate you being here. I appreciate your comments, and I hope that you find joy in the day.